For today's tutorial, we're going to need 18 gauge wire to make the hoops. We're going to be needing 22 gauge wire and 24 gauge wire to make little roses and vines that climb up the hoops. We will also need 26 gauge wire to wrap on your little stones. These are the earrings that inspired this tutorial. I made these a few years ago. I was inspired by the simple twisted knot rose ring that everybody makes online, but instead of making it into a ring, I just made them into vines. And I also have here, these are called cup burrs or burr cups, but you can also use a file, and you're going to need all of your pliers along with a hammer and your bench block. Last but not least, you'll need your gemstone drops, and these are mystic quartz. Here I started with a bottle of isopropyl alcohol as a mandrel. Just choose something that's going to be pretty close to the size of the earrings that you want, but just a little bit bigger, because I'm going to wrap the 18 gauge around it 2 times, because we're making 2 earrings, and this is going to help us stay consistent in our size. You can see here where they join, and I'm going to cut them both to make 2 separate hoops. Now I will be using the end of my hammer as the mandrel to wrap these around. It wasn't originally my size preference, but it actually came really close to what I did have in mind. So I just adjusted it as I needed to, and it actually came out pretty cool. I am letting the ends overlap slightly because we will be bending them back into little loops, and this enables them to be looped and still come together and touch. I hope that makes sense. I will be filing off the ends now, the sharp pieces on the ends where I cut the wires. I'm using a cup burr to do this. It makes it just like a smooth rounded end, but if you don't have a cup burr, like I didn't for many years, you can just use a regular plain old file. Here you can see in the background that I have one hoop earring that is already finished, and so now I'm going to be making this one match that one. And I'm just using my round nose pliers and bending back the ends to make little loops. They don't have to be super flush up against the wire because we will actually be wrapping more wire around, through, and under the loops, if that makes any sense. But right now I'm going to be hammering the whole earring flat. I'm going to be focusing mostly on the larger portion of the hoop, but in order to give the little loops their strength, I do gently hammer on them a little bit also. Reshape it as necessary to help keep it in a round shape. And then we're going to flip it over, and I'm going to use the rounded end of my hammer to make the little dents all over, the little hammered textures. Do this all over until you're satisfied. Here are both hoop earrings complete, hammered, textured, and shaped. Now we're going to be taking 8 to 10 inches of 24 gauge wire, and we're going to be making our first little rose at the top to help bind on this little jump ring. I did forget to mention you will need a little jump ring. I think I used 20 gauge here. So we're going to find about the halfway point, a little bit off center, and you're going to use the very tip of your round nose pliers, and I like to wrap it around 2 times. So you've got one complete loop and then all the way around. I'll show you that here in a second. And this is actually going to be the very center of our rose. And once I bring the 2 pieces together, I'm sorry I got out of frame, I use my hands and I very gently twist the 2 wires together into a spiral. And I find using your hands gives it a more natural and organic look as opposed to using a tool, because this way none of the spirals are perfect, and in nature none of the petals of a rose are perfect. So it's a lot better to use your hands. But once I've twisted it down a ways, I'm going to, as tightly as I can, curl this back down onto itself. And we're just going to twist it or curl it around like a spiral, and the little twists are going to look like rose petals. And if it starts to bunch up on you, because it happens to me, so it's probably going to happen to you, you can squeeze it down with either your thumbs or your pliers. I like to squeeze it down with pliers too. It kind of flattens it out, and it also gives it a little bit of strength. And if you want your rose bigger, all you have to do is add a few more little twists like I did here. I added a few more petals, and then keep coiling it up until you are satisfied with the size of the rose. Now, since I'm done with this size of this rose, I'm going to take one of the wires back behind the entire thing and try and pull them out flat so that they're across from each other. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in a second. Now I'm going to be taking these two wires, I'm going to be pulling them up through the loops. And then I will put them through the jump ring and pull them back forward to make a wrap. And I tried to do this slowly so that you guys could see the whole thing. So I'm just going to shut up and let you watch. Definitely be patient and take your time with this, because it is a little frustrating with the 24 gauge. But as you can see, this is it when it's finished. And I just brought it through the jump ring to the front, through the little loops on the sides, and then back around again to make two wraps. And I'll turn it around here in a second so you can see the back. You see how I'm taking it behind the loop? And now to finish it, I'm bringing it through the hoop earring, and I'm going to pull it tight and wrap it 2 times to finish this piece. And do the same on the other side. Pull it tight and wrap it 2 times just to finish the little wire end. You can see the jump ring hardly has any movement to it. It's nice and strongly bound down. And here's what it looks like from the back. I repeated this on both sides, so now they both have roses holding the jump rings on top. Now comes the fun and creative part, because we're just going to be taking these leftover wires and making little vines and loops and curls all the way down the frame of the earrings, the 18 gauge frame. And I had no previous idea in my head. I just decided to just go for it. I did try to match the second earring when I was done as close to the first one as I could, but it didn't really matter to me if they were an exact match, because this is very nature-esque and nature isn't perfect. But yeah, just have fun looping, curling, twisting, vining, curling. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Just have fun making little twisty vines up and down your earrings. When you get to your last little tail and you can't really go much further, I like to take my round nose pliers and make a teeny tiny little curly Q at the top, and then just try to wrap it down and fit it into a little nook or cranny amidst the other vines. But I think the curly Q kind of finishes off. It makes it look really cute, and it fits it into the whole design. Now I'm pinching it down with my chain nose pliers, and then I also go through the whole other length of the vines and give them a little squeeze later on. And now I'm continuing on the other side. Again, no pre-formed idea, I'm just going for it, making it look as natural and little viney loops as I can. And when you reach the end, I will make my little curly Q and tuck it into a little nesting spot. Now, like I said before, I'm going through and giving everything a quick little squeeze. That way I know everything is nice and tight up against the frame, and we're not going to have very much movement. And this is the finished side on one, and here they are side by side, the first and the second. And like I said, I try to make them pretty close, but they don't have to be perfect. And now, to make sure that we center our drops and our roses together as close as we can, I did turn them one on its back and put them up together so that I can see where they are together. And I'm marking with a Sharpie marker where I'm going to have my roses sit. That way the roses will be as close to being symmetrical as possible. Now, because I'm starting with a bigger rose on the bottom, I'm actually taking about 12 inches of 22 gauge. These are all dead soft wires, by the way, if you guys are wondering. And I am making a rose just like I showed you before, how I twist it around 2 times on my round nose pliers, and then I slowly twist it with my hands. I'm sorry I keep going out of frame, you guys. I was looking at my hands instead of at the camera, so I kept forgetting to center myself. But you just twist to make petals until you're happy, and then we will coil it back in on itself just like before. I make all my roses the same. Each one looks a little different from the other, but that's just from natural occurrences. So twist it and coil it until you're happy with your size of your rose. Now, since I've decided to finish this rose here, and this is a heavier gauge wire, I did need the help of my pliers to bend the wires behind the little rose before I straightened them out, if that makes sense. That way the wires are more centered on the back of the rose. And then I'm going to pull them back out so they're straight across from each other. Give it a little squeeze to make sure it's nice and tight. And gently reshape it as I need to make sure that it's nice and round and a pretty cute little rose. This is the finished rose for the bottom, the large one, and then I went ahead and made another large rose and then 2 smaller roses out of 24 gauge, and those ones are about 8 to 10 inches. Here you can see I'm centering the rose up with our mark, and I'm going to bind it 2 times on each side. Give it a quick squeeze with your chain nose pliers to make sure it's nice and tight and it's not going to move. Now I'm going to start vining on this side only because I know straight down from the center rows I am going to make a little loop so that I can hang my stone from. So I'm just going to make some little twisties and vines, paying attention to where I'm at, straight up and down. And when I reach there, I am going to use my round nose pliers to make sure that I leave a big enough gap that I can dangle a stone from it, but still also look like it's actually hanging from a vine. I hope that makes sense. But once you've made your little loop, then all you have to do is to continue vining and twisting your 22 gauge wire up and around the earring, just like before. No rhyme or reason, just kind of twist and vine and swirl and curl and loop, all the fun stuff. Just be creative. Just like before, when you reach your end, give it a little curly cue and tuck it on in where it's going to fit and look like a perfect ending. And then I give everything a quick squeeze down with my chain nose pliers to make sure everything's nice and tight up against the frame. I am giving this little loop here a quick little twist to make sure it lays centered. And you can see it is straight up and down. So I'm very happy with it. And now I'm going to take the other 22 gauge and continue vining it up the other side, just like before. My camera did stop recording at this point, and I actually finished the earring, so I'm just going to show you that I did put the second rows right next to the larger rows, and just like before, I vined up the extra wires up the sides until they looked nice and cute and like they were growing. Here you can see after I oxidized them with Liver of Sulfur, and I also added the little stones, and this is after I gave them a quick hand polish and then I tossed them in the tumbler. And this is the finished product, guys. I hope you really liked this tutorial, and let me know what you guys think, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time.